Welcome everybody. I think it's time to make a start. Thank you so much for turning up, and I want to say thanks so much to Resonance for laying this on. This is NFICannes, in case you're not aware of it, which I'm sure you all know what that means. And congratulations on being here and not somewhere down south. Shoreditch beats the Croisette way better than anything else. I must admit, I think I've done some gigs in some. My name is Dominic Mills, by the way. I write a column for Mediatel every week. I used to be the editorial director of Campaign. I used to go to Cannes, but I don't go anymore by choice. Okay, I don't have any lingering regrets. I've done some gigs in some unusual places. Once, I think, in a room above the Groucho that looked like a brothel. Or so I imagined a brothel would be, but I think this absolutely takes the biscuit with the kind of skull statue outside. What a fantastic venue. Great imagination to find this. I've changed in the green room out there. I put on my shorts because we're at Cannes, obviously, aren't we? I have to say it was the filthiest green room I've ever been in, actually. There's sort of dust all over the floor. But who cares about that? So the other thing I noticed that's different about it, there were people here an hour early. So congratulations on that. I mean, I don't know whether that's because this is the hottest ticket in town today, or whether because you believe there is unlimited booze, or whether you just fancied bunking off early. But our theme today is it time for digital to grow up? Yeah, well, maybe. We're going to find out, and I hope. The one thing I think it isn't, it's not time for us to grow up, and I think we shouldn't grow up till well into the evening, actually. So let's enjoy it with the spirit that it's intended. We've got a great agenda today. We've got two of the most prominent marketers and kind of forward-thinking marketers and media people out here in the first panel, who I'm going to introduce in a minute. We've got Dee from the IAB talking about better ads. We all need better ads. We've got some great video, we've got a panel session, we've got neuroscience, we've got a quiz, and we've got rosé. Okay, so I want you all to participate as well. We've got some roving mics, so there are chances to ask questions. So don't feel shy, feel emboldened by the booze, but if you're slurring or whatever, I will cut you off, okay? So let's go. Okay, let me call up Alex Tait and Elizabeth Hodson, our first panel. So let's have a big hand for them. I'll go and start. You'll notice, actually, that Elizabeth and I are equipped with booze, but Alex is going for the water so far.
Although I haven't got the water.
Bring on the water, okay? Bring on the water. Right, so let's start with Alex Tait. Late, he's got a whole jug. Late of Unilever, now going solo, and he's set up his own consultancy called Entropy. I had to ask him what that actually meant. It means the measurement of disorder in a system, he tells me. I didn't check that on my dictionary, but never mind. We'll believe you, Alex, okay. He's got a fantastic career. Head of digital marketing at the Post Office, director of acquisition for Amex, head of e-commerce for Arcadia, digital director at Kellogg's, and most recently, before he went solo, media director at Unilever, where you commanded, what, the second biggest budget in the world? Or the biggest?
Not in the UK, but it's one of the biggest.
Okay, one of the biggest. He's modest to a fault. And then on Alex's left, if you can see her, wave your hand, Elizabeth Hodson, media manager of Heineken UK. Like Alex, she has a CV that says class and accomplishment. I had Elizabeth down as a beerophile, but I can see she can turn her hand to mobile, retail, and DIY. She started as a media planner. She went to Dubai with Mindshare. Then she joined Unilever. Then you went to Vietnam. Had a spell with Homebase, channel manager at Carphone Warehouse, and then the call of beer came. 4 years.
I do work for Heineken.
4 years. Okay. Well, we'll call it beer. All right, just for the sake of argument. Yeah.
Well, absolutely wrong. It's pleased to be no end to see that we've got our biggest competitors beer all around the. Thank you, Rolly.
Rolly, where are you? Take a caning from your client. So Elizabeth, 4 years at AB InBev. and currently in her 4th year at Heineken, where she's head of media and digital marketing, has about 50 million to spend and looks after Kronenbourg, Desperados, Foster's, Strongbow, and of course Heineken. Okay, so I'm going to move over there. In front of you, with his back to us, is Charlie the camera. Don't worry about Charlie the camera. I'm going to sit over here. I hope everybody can see, and then we'll get started, and then we'll call up for some questions later. And Alex is taking a picture. Right. Okay, let's get going. Let's start with the kind of broader picture.
Right.
You spend a lot of money on digital. I don't know how much of your 50 million goes on digital, but I presume a high proportion. What do you use it for?
So for us at Heineken, we mainly use it for reach and awareness. We don't have a B2C offering, and also because of our target audience is much younger. Our main target audience is 18 to 34, so we need to fish where the fish are, so we use digital to really target our younger consumers, also for footfall driving and traffic driving to the outlets and the retailers.
So not very much that's performance driven, would that be right?
Very, very little.
Very little. Okay. Alex, what about you? Put your Unilever hat back on for a moment.
Sure, and if I answer not just for Unilever, but just more generally, actually, from a few different hats. I think, and just to give a bit of a different answer to Elizabeth. So it's a mix really of, obviously everyone talks a lot about digital media and a lot about content, but also actually if you're a brand or an advertiser, and I think this speaks a little bit to the theme of digital going up, you spend a lot on systems and tech and on technology from a brand point of view that often other people in the ecosystem don't get that exposed to. But
how much, roughly, as a proportion, do you spend on the other stuff?
Well, the budgets often sit in different places, so they're not often owned by the marketing communications team, but a lot. And it'll often, certainly from a global point of view, dwarf actually what you're spending on advertising in some instances. But actually, I think so one of the challenges you've got in marketing communications is how you stitch all of that together, which has led to various developments around sort of consultancies popping up and thinking about how they can help put all that together. But ultimately, it's about what it's used for is ultimately really around sort of brand building, or more importantly, actually the bang you get from your buck. So driving an ROI if you're a direct response advertiser, or MMM if you don't have a direct path to purchase.
Okay. How do you know it's working, Elizabeth? I mean, you're spending all this money.
Yeah.
You've got to know it's working, otherwise you wouldn't be able to spend it. How do you know that?
So we're quite lucky at Heineken. We spend a lot of money on learn and reapply. It's a key pillar for us. So we do marketing mix modelling across a few brands. So that can go back to a 3-year period. We do campaign measurement, brand uplift studies with partners such as Facebook. We've done some DLX studies, so that's straight to path to purchase using dunnhumby data. And underlying beneath that as well, we also are having direct contracts with various third-party verification tools such as Mode and Nielsen. So I'd
how
say
important are those?
So they're fundamental.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
And unless you know that people are actually viewing your ads, there's no point.
Yeah. Okay. Alex, in terms of measurement, because it's one of the kind of subjects of the day, what needs to improve? Where are the kind of fault lines in digital measurement?
I think it's measurements been. So I probably about 5 years ago, for about 4 years, chaired the digital group at ISBAR, and we did a survey every year to see what the most important topics to advertisers were, and consistently measurement was up there. So it's and actually when you think about trying to measure digital and understand the value that it's driving, I think the conversation just evolves, to be honest, in many different ways. But two of the areas I think certainly need some improvement. One is around how you measure brand media, so how you measure cut-through. I've not seen a convincing example of something that's repeatable and affordable that can measure cut-through on a like-for-like basis with TV and digital. Some people trying to do it, but not that effectively. And I think MMM as well, econometrics, is something that really needs to improve as well. I think sometimes you've got in the industry different conventions and within different subsectors, conventions around what can't be measured. And FMCG for a long time, the fact that digital couldn't be measured very granularly was a prevailing sort of thought, but it's just total rubbish really if you look into it. And actually a lot of that is driven by the capability of the econometrics providers and them needing to upskill in terms of how they're using data.
So what you're saying is that people who say that it can't be measured are just being feeble, not spending enough money, not paying enough attention to it. Is that right?
Well, it's often about capability,
Yeah.
actually,
Yeah.
and it's about kind of understanding what the process
Okay.
could be and how that can be facilitated.
Elizabeth?
And I think you have to be really careful on how it's interpreted as well. So back to your point, that's why we do so many different types of research using different types of methodology to make sure that we're seeing the full picture. We're not going to change our entire media plan just because an ROI study says that out of home doesn't work from an ROI and TV does, for example, because we use media for so many different aspects. It's awareness, it's reach, it's about relevancy, it's about closeness, it's about getting closer to consumer. Ultimately, we want to sell beer, but you can't change your whole media plan based on one piece of research. So, agree with you totally, that it's about interpretation and capability.
Yeah. So it's got to be integrated into...
100%, 100%. And what we do is, we have our brand intelligence guys and myself, and we work very, very closely with the econometric guys to make sure that whatever we put on a slide to share with the wider business cannot be misinterpreted.
Right.
Because that's the danger.
Yeah, okay. So how big a problem is it, Alex, that the likes of Google and Facebook aren't dancing with Barb and the other jigs?
When walled gardens haven't historically, it's been a big issue. So, and again, if I think back to when I was quite heavily involved with ISBAR, working with the IEB, it's quite and Dee's on later to talk a bit about some of the great work the IEB is doing. You can do a great job so far in corralling a very fragmented member base at the IEB behind something, but ultimately, if you don't have a couple of the big players involved, it's not as credible as it could be. The IEB does a great job of trying to, push that all along in a sensible direction, and I think recent events have actually really helped Google and Facebook.
Such as what?
Well, so if you go back to everyone, I'm sure, heard about the sort of times-driven brand safety issues over the last 6 months, and some of the, I think, burning platforms around digital really helped. Some of the narrative around that from different quarters of the industry really helped some of the platforms realise that, in line with the theme of this session, that it is time. Digital is the biggest media, in terms of spend. In many other markets in the UK, it is too. So, for us to have sort of confidence in it and to be using it as effectively as possible.
Carry on.
Well, it needs all members really to get behind industry initiatives like JICWebs and a lot of the fine work the IB is doing that Google and Facebook have actually started to do. So the proof of the pudding's in the eating, I suppose. But certainly, if you think so, Facebook committed in January to getting behind third-party verification, and I think Google are likely to do that in Q3 or Q4. So there's been a lot of movement there.
So you're saying it's happening. It's coming.
The momentum's there.
The momentum's there.
It hasn't actually fully happened.
It sounds like they're all doing it with one hand, but one arm tied behind their backs. It feels like that to me.
I slightly disagree. I don't think that the momentum has really taken off yet. I think they are addressing issues as they come up. So Facebook introducing moats so you can actually track them and use third-party verification, and Google post the times, but they're being reactive. They're not being proactive.
Okay.
And I think as two of the biggest digital players in the market, they need to be really leading the way.
Okay, you go and tell them then, Elizabeth. Right, just in terms of, let's sort of broaden it out again, in terms of, the way clients are organised around digital. You both got a lot of experience in this area. How do they need to organise themselves and manage it internally? Typically, using your experience across lots of different clients, where do they go wrong, or where can they go better with it?
Well, I think in terms of driving digital change, if I just think about different roles I've worked across, I think the most successful overall programs around transformation and embedding digital is when the CEO owns it, and it's one of his objectives. If it's owned by marketing or other teams, it needs to be a lot more joined up than that, and really driven down kind of throughout the whole organisation. And there are different schools of thought, and again, sort of narratives, I think, around digital being dead, that I think came out of various sort of creative agencies, and there was a bit of an industry narrative around that. Certainly, I've not seen any evidence of that in the last couple of years, and actually from brands I've spoken to. It's true that brands need to really embrace digital, and that's as much sometimes about mindset and behaviours as actually the programme underpinning it. But you still need a strong set of digital specialists or of marketing communication specialists to drive forward an effective agenda at the client side, in my view.
Elizabeth, what have you done then in terms of reorganising your own department?
Yeah, so back to your question about, where do we go wrong, I think the key here is that we don't know we don't know what utopia looks like yet, so I don't think anyone's gone wrong. I think that all companies, all agencies as well, but a lot of clients are just starting to really not even, put their foot in the sand, so to speak, in the water. They're diving in. So Heineken is an example. Been at Heineken for 4 years, and after 6 months of myself being there, we brought in a social media manager, and it was just two of us in the team for 3.5 years. In the last 6 months, we've just hired another four members.
Yeah.
So we've got our 2 social media managers here, community managers here. We've got a data marketing manager and a digital asset manager. So, and I've speak to quite a few clients through ISBA actually, and it's quite interesting to see that different clients are bringing in different specialists depending on what they're after. So a DR client, for example, might bring in more programmatic.
Yeah. So these were all functions that would have been outsourced to the agency before, or
Yes.
different agencies.
Yep.
How do you make the business case for that? I mean, your CFO, your CMO might say, why have a dog and bark yourself? How do you make the business case for that?
So for us, especially when it comes to community management and social, you have to be there with the brand. You have to, consumers are expecting to have, immediate responses. You can't be sending out a response to your agency, getting them to come back to the brand team, seek approval, go to legal, go to all kinds of kind of tick boxes. So for us, we need to have it in-house to really ensure that we are as close to the brands as possible. And don't get me wrong, our media agency and creative agencies, they are ambassadors of our brands, but the immediacy you're not going to get.
Yeah. Alex, I think you told me earlier that in your view about 2/3 of clients don't have specialist media teams. Why do you think that is, and what needs to change for them to embrace the idea of having media teams?
Yeah, and that's quite a notional figure, I think, just based on brands I've spoken
Sounded good to me. I was impressed by it anyway.
Well, I think we're thinking, but if again, there's a lot of kind of agencies and publishers and brands in the room as well, and from your experience, that probably kind of rings true, I think. But some of it's really a legacy of, I think, when media was simpler and wasn't as complex to navigate and plan against. And some of it is just really down to having the capability or advice really on how you should set yourself up to be as effective as possible across a very fragmented media landscape, but also the different parties that you've got to pull together these days, from tech vendors through to agencies, through to internal teams, through to various other sort of bodies that you need to work with internally and externally to have the maximum impact of your comms. I think there's I think there's certainly a strong need now for, and we're talking a bit about industry initiatives and around driving forward, some things that will make digital more effective and cohesive in terms of its effectiveness on a media plan. But there's a real need to address that capability gap that we've got within brands. Because ultimately, the stronger the team, because this isn't a zero-sum game necessarily, so the stronger your team you've got internally, it makes the agency team's life a lot easier, the publisher team's life a lot easier as well, in terms of the choreographing and casting of working as effectively as possible in pulling together the best plan that you can. So yeah, I think it's in the ecosystem's interest to try to bridge that gap, but I think there is a big capability gap around media knowledge.
Okay. Does anybody? I can smell food coming in. It's driving me mad. Does anybody want a chance to ask Alex or Elizabeth a question? Just raise your hand, and we have roving mics. Unfortunately, anybody's behind the pillar, I can't see you. Is there anybody behind the pillar waving a hand? You're all eating and drinking. That's what the truth is, isn't it? Okay, don't worry about it. One of the other things that we've seen recently is that the likes of you were talking about the CEO owning digital. because of its impact throughout the whole organisation. We've seen the likes of Accenture coming into the market in marketing services and creative services. I mean, Alex, what do you think they have to offer media departments or marketing departments? Do you think they have a convincing, credible offer?
I think there's maybe I would say this, but I think there is a very compelling rationale because of the capability gap of having some advisors to help you think through how you orchestrate your marketing together to be as effective as possible, and also bridge some of that sort of capability gap. But also, actually, a lot of what consultancies are sometimes used for is actually to staff up, where you've got FTE or people challenges around being able to allocate people against a project quickly. Working with the consultancy is a way of, it's not necessarily the right thing to do, but it's a way of a brand bringing in some expertise quite quickly to kickstart a project, of which I've seen numerous examples of. Accenture's proposition, to my understanding, is, which I'm sure there's been a lot of trade press coverage about, so I'm sure you've heard of, is a mix of trying to pull together the sort of creative proposition with Karmarama through to a marketing consultancy with a business consultancy. And yeah, you know, there's pros and cons to different consultants and consultancies you can use, but there is a lot of logic to having that a lot further upstream, which is what they're trying to do in terms of strategy and decision making from a business point of view, to pull all that complexity together. I think the overall KPI they try to hang it all off is around experience, and experience being the new product, which again is nothing new, I don't think, but for a lot of brands and a lot of sectors makes a lot of sense.
Well, yeah, Elizabeth.
So going back to your earlier point about capability gap, if more clients and bought expertise internally, media teams, etc., that would be up to the media team to really share the capability. So, you know, again, over at Heineken, we spend a lot of time on building the capability of our marketing team. Luckily for us, we have quite a young brand team, so they're all eager and keen to learn. But, you know, we are doing monthly sessions, you know, just a couple of hours a month, or maybe 2-day sessions throughout the year.
Yeah.
And we bring in, you know, external, you know, whether it be Facebook, Snapchat, Shazam, etc. We bring them all in to really help to raise the capability and the understanding of what they can actually do and the potential risks if you don't do it correctly.
And I really agree with that. And I think actually the end point, so you can bring in a consultancy to sort of kickstart something, but it should be ultimately to enable the capability to be built internally with a brand over time, rather than relying on that for a long period of time, which it sounds like it's pretty much what you've been doing at Heineken.
Okay. I mean, let me just go back to the original premise of the afternoon. Is it time for digital to grow up? So, how do you interpret that question? You know, there are a lot of different ways you can look at it. For you, what does that question mean, Elizabeth?
We've had this conversation earlier. I'm really struggling with understanding
You're supposed to rehearse, for Christ's sake.
I know.
You said for some good things.
Because, yeah, I don't know if it's about digital growing up, or is it about, you know, us as a marketing community to really put more pressure, and for us to really put more pressure on the likes of the walled gardens, and, you know, in terms of measurement, what do we expect? You know, when you look at the, you know, what a viewability is from the IAB standards, is that acceptable for anyone? I don't think 50% in view for a second or 2 seconds
not from Unilever,
is not acceptable.
No.
So when I'm, you know, how I'm interpreting that question is very much probably not digital, but how we need to really put some force behind.
So which Alex believes that the industry is doing. Alex, what's your interpretation of that question?
I think a lot of it's speaking to, as I was saying earlier, this sort of burning platform narrative that seems to have emerged over the last 6 to 12 months, and just digital being leveraged in the best way possible by brands, but also traded and viewed in a similar way to other media. So brands and advertisers can make sensible choices about where they put their investment. So the supply chain program that's being driven by various different industry bodies, including ISBAR, and has been talked about quite vocally by a number of different brands, is quite key. So different areas around ad verification. So I think, you know, a couple of steps that are quite well known, but number one being third-party verification is a hygiene factor. That should just be the case across all media owners from a brand point of view, around things like brand safety, thinking about how you address that, about actually, I think, how we move to a place where we're trading on viewability. I think that's incredibly important. Where fraud is addressed, and there's a lot of good work the IEB are doing that I think Dee might touch on later in his talk. Oh no, he's not getting. No. But the IEB is doing a lot of great work behind that. And then something that's actually not kind of missed off, I think, sometimes, which is actually brands being quite clear on their data strategy and data ownership, and being clear on how their data's used. That isn't often part of it. So
you're both interpreting that in a very through a very wide frame, saying it's about everybody's responsibility, not just the digital platforms' responsibility to grow up. Okay, last question. We're here in a year's time. Please, Rowley, Tim, whatever. What are we going to be talking about in a year's time? Preview. What are the big discussion points going to be in a year's time?
Honestly, I think we are still in a year's time going to be talking about measurement and walled gardens. I don't think that's going to be anything that we're going to solve overnight. And I've been talking about measurement for the last 2 years, and we still seem to be stuck in what we believed was a correct way of measuring 2 years ago. So I honestly believe that we are still going to be talking about measurement and walled gardens.
Okay.
And I made a note of this actually because I thought this would come up and be a useful thing to reference. But I wrote a column a while ago about the year ahead and about what the most important things were to advertisers, which was based on a survey of advertisers through ISBAR. And it's interesting to reflect on what those things were. So number one was measurement, being the top. Number two was attribution. Another one was around audience measurement, which has turned into third-party verification. Another one was restructuring marketing departments, where digital sat into that. Another one was about data privacy regulation, which was actually the Privacy Directive, which kind of dated a little bit. And another one was about brand safety. And any guesses what year that was from? Bit of audience participation. Yeah. Anyone have a guess? 14? It was 2011. So it's quite interesting to see that a lot of those themes are still current, but there needs to be more work done, as Elizabeth's saying. But there is some momentum, probably not enough, as you're saying, but there is some momentum, and that's why we all need to work together to try to drive some of those things forward. But to answer it properly, I think GDPR is going to be a really big sort of issue that's started to be talked about a lot. And actually, I think a lot of the positive things around digital, it's easy to forget actually, like how amazing technology and digital is. And any of the naysayers really just need to, I think they're missing the point sometimes on digital in terms of how transformative it is to business models and to brands and to media. And two of the most interesting areas, I think, are around how digital out of home is evolving. When you look across some of the work that JCDecaux and Clear Channel are doing, and also some of the developments with TV, where there hasn't been a lot to talk about. I think the broadcasters have felt that for a couple of years. But actually, if you look at people buddying up and partnering with AdSmart and Sky, the idea and ability to drive change in TV just needs like 4 or 5 players to get round the table, which is a lot easier to drive forward sometimes in other parts of
You are glass half full, Alex. And you can avoid the columnist's dirty secret, which is just repeating the same predictions column year in, year out, in the hope that eventually you will be right. So obviously, because you're taking a much, much cheerier perspective than I would anyway, that's because I'm a miserabilist. Right, okay, I think we are done. We have used up enough of our time with Alex and Elizabeth here. So will you join me in giving them a big hand?
Thank you very much.